Okay, Boker Tov, Erev Tov. I hope people are not tired here. They have an hour less sleep, more sleep, whatever. But next 3 weeks, of course, we're only six. We're getting closer to Israel. We're only 6 hours behind you guys now. So, anyways, and I want to thank Rep Shvat for teaching the course. Always a pleasure to have him. Today's the sixth, the last of this series on Rav Kook, and I want to thank him and wish him well. He told me there was a azaka a few minutes ago, so I mean it's unbelievable the way we have to talk. But I think otherwise you go crazy. So people have to joke about it and make other things. So he's hoping we can make it clear with the class, and thank you. Okay. Say Rev Cook lived in many ways in more difficult times. These are difficult times, but they're also potentially very good times. We have to go through difficulty to reach better times. I think you would agree with me more than I agree with me. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay. Vakasha.
Okay, so again, even though we just had a siren a couple of minutes ago, we got out about 10 minutes ago, and usually over the last couple of days, that means that it's going to be quiet for the next couple of hours, so we shouldn't have any problems. Um, there's a klal, a rule, general rule. People say that geniuses are about 2 generations ahead of their time. And Rav Kook is a good example where there are a lot of ideas that he wrote about well before the state of Israel, well before the Six-Day War, well before globalization that we're going to discuss today. And today we can really understand a lot more deeply what Rav Kook was referring to. And a lot of people speak about Rav Kook as the spiritual father of religious Zionism. And of course, religious Zionism is one of the major chidushim, innovative ideas of Rav Kook. And maybe we'll just dedicate a minute or two to Rav Kook's religious Zionism because today we're going to talk about the other side of the coin, and that is the globalization and the universal aspect of the Jewish people. So let's just recall for in a minute, Rav Kook stresses a lot the idea of Asher Bachar Banu, that God chose the Jewish people. Every nation is important, but how much more so the chosen people, that we have an eternal role to play. And just as we brought monotheism to the world and we brought morality to the world, the Ten Commandments, and et cetera, et cetera. So we have this universal role that we are a nation which has a universal role. And that already is from the beginning when God says to Abraham, Lech lecha mi'artzecha, leave your land, leave your father's home, and go to the land of Israel that I am going to show you. Ve'escha goy gadol, I will make you into a great nation. V'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpechot ha'adama. And through you, the Jewish nation, will come blessing to all of mankind. In other words, even though, yes, we very often talk about the Jewish people, because that's who we are, Rav Kook stresses that we should never forget that we are 0.2% of mankind, and that God is the father of 99.8 of the other percent of mankind, and that even though we do talk about the special place of the Jewish people in mankind, it's important not to forget our role as a universal nation. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. And let's get into it. We'll go into the share screen. Okay. And what we're going to learn today is from In Ayah. It is Rav Kook's commentary on the Agaritot, on the midrashic aspects of the Talmud. And we have 4 volumes, the 2 volumes on Masechet Brachot and 2 volumes on Masechet Shabbat. And anybody who's interested, I have about 400 classes of on this topic of Venaya. You could find it on YU Torah. And what he does is he takes you all know that the Gemara jumps from topic to topic. And Rav Kook uses this as a springboard to relate to every topic under the sun. That's why it's particularly interesting, because most of the Rav Kook books were edited according to topics. And here it really is every paragraph is a different topic. So let's see it. The basis is in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet. That's 33b, and it's a very famous Gemara. And some of you may even be familiar with this from Monty Python. I think in one of the Monty Python movies, they have a skit straight from this Gemara, and it reads as follows: "Ve'amai karu lerosh hamidabrim b'chol makom." I'm sorry. Hey, where did my share screen go? I'm sorry. I don't know why that left. Let's try that again. We were into it. We'll go into it again. Here we go. So the Gemara had just said that Rabbi Yehuda, whenever he wants the floor, he is Rosh HaMedabrim. He is the first speaker. And the Gemara asks, "V'amai korile Rosh HaMedabrim b'chol makom?" Where did Rabbi Yehuda get this a privilege that he's the first speaker, the opening speaker, whenever he wants to? Diyatvi Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Shimon, three of the great students of Rabbi Akiva, that is Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon, that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now we're talking about 50, 60 years after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. This is either towards the end or right after the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which is important to point out because we're going to see what the rabbis have to say about those Romans who had recently destroyed our holy temple and had squashed very brutally the Bar Kokhba rebellion. So what do they have to say? So these three rabbis, they were sitting, V'yativ Yehuda ben Gerim Gabayu, and Yehuda, the son of converts, was sitting with them. Now, we all know that you're not supposed to remind a convert of his past. So why does the Gemara tell us that Yehuda, not Rebbe Yehuda, Yehuda, the son of converts, was the son of converts? Well, as we'll see, it's an essential part of the story. Patach Rabbi Yehuda v'amar Rabbi Yehuda started saying, Kama na'ima se'en shel umazu. How great are the actions, the developments of the Roman Empire? Tiknu shvakim, they build great marketplaces. Most of you, I'm sure, have been in Yerushalayim, and you know about a 5-minute walk upstairs from the Kotel to the Jewish quarter, you pass the Cardo. The Cardo, that is the Roman shuk, the Roman marketplace that Rabbi Yehuda is praising. So the Romans, they build great marketplaces. Tiknu gesharim, they build great bridges. Tiknu merchatzot, they build great bathhouses. Anybody who was ever in Beit Shan, they have over the last 5 years, they have really developed the huge Roman bathhouse in Beit Shan. And you could see that it really is something very, very large and impressive. So Rabbi Yehuda praises the Romans for what they did good. And this sort of reminds us of Rebbe Meir, another student of Rebbe Akiva, who continued learning from Elisha ben Avuya, that Hannah, who left Judaism, and he gave the parable, he said that it's just like a pomegranate, where you suck the juice and you spit out the seeds. So too, that's the direction that Rebbe Yehuda is saying. Yes, the Romans are our enemy. Yes, they destroyed our temple. Yes, they killed hundreds of thousands of Jews in the Bar Kokhba rebellion. Nevertheless, give credit where credit is due, that they developed the land of Israel, building bathhouses and marketplaces and bridges. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Yossi shatak. Rabbi Yossi did not comment. And I was on Shlichut right after the fall of the Iron Curtain in Tufshin Mem Ted in 1989. the state of Israel wanted to start B'nai Akiva. So they asked me to begin the religious Zionist youth movement in Minsk, in Belarus. And that was just after the fall, and everyone was still that was how the KGB, they were very smart. Everybody in the Jewish community said, don't speak to him. He is a stinker. He tattles to the KGB. You can't trust him. And the other guy says, don't speak to him because he works with the KGB. And that's how they worked. And it's very difficult to know who to trust. And in fact, what we were told before we went to the Soviet Union was it's always good to stay silent. If you're not sure if you're being listened into, go outside and speak to the refuseniks or whoever you need to speak to outside. I remember they taught us to go into the bathrooms of the hotel and just to keep flushing the toilet so that the ha'azanot, the listening devices, the Russians wouldn't be able to hear. Anyway, just like in those days, Yossi Rabbi Yossi does not have anything good to say about the Romans. Apparently, he had bad things to say about the Romans, but he preferred not to say anything. And as my grandfather used to say, if you don't have anything good to say, just be quiet. And that's what Rabbi Yossi did. He didn't praise the Romans. He didn't talk bad about the Romans. Na Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who we know from the continuation of the Gemara that he had a lot of righteous indignation. He was a very extreme person. He got angry when he saw people plowing in the physical world or planting in the physical world. So that same Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai could not stand what Rabbi Yehuda had just praised the Roman people. V'amar, why are you praising the terrible pagan Roman people who just destroyed our temple? How can you praise them? And even if, yes, they build good things in the land of Israel, they did it for themselves. They didn't do it for us. Tiknu shvakim, why did the Romans build marketplaces? Loshi ben zonot, excuse me, to have prostitutes there for their own use. Merchatzot, why did they build such nice bathhouses in the land of Israel? Ladin bain atzman, so that they could have pleasure. Gisharim, why did they collect tolls? Litol behen meches, in order to collect tolls. I remember growing up in America, whenever you went on a major bridge, especially interstate, they have these tolls, right? And in Israel, just a couple of years ago, they on Kvish Shesh, the number 6 road, that's the largest road in the country, so you have to pay. So here we see where it began. It began with the Romans, that whoever wanted to pass over a bridge had to pay a toll. And the idea was, hey, the Romans said, we built the bridge. If you want to make use of it, help us cover the costs. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says everything that they did was for their own selfish use. Halach Yehuda ben Gerim v'siper divreihem v'nishmeu lemalchut. Yehuda ben Gerim, that is that innocent bystander. He is the son of converts, and he apparently told his parents what was going on in the Beit Midrash that day. And his parents, who were former Romans, apparently still had friends who were Romans, and they told their friends what the Jews had to say about them. Right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke against, and Rabbi Yehuda spoke for, and Rabbi Yossi no comment. And in the end, apparently that's why it says that Yehuda is the son of converts, because it's an essential part of the story. That's how the Romans heard about what the Jews were saying. Amru, so the Romans said, Yehuda she'ilah yit'aleh, Rabbi Yehuda, who praised the Romans and our marketplaces, he is going to be promoted. And what was his promotion? That he has the right to be the first speaker whenever he wants the floor. This is how we started the Gemara. Okay? Yossi sheshatak, Rabbi Yossi, who did not praise the Romans, but he didn't curse them either. He remained quiet. Yigle litzipori. He will be exiled to Siberia. right? That's very similar to Soviet Russia. Again, if you're not in favor of us and you're not clapping long enough or loud enough for Stalin's speeches, so they'll send you to Siberia. Shimon Shegina Yehareg, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was again a student of Rabbi Akiva and probably a participant of the Bar Kokhba rebellion with the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who were killed in that rebellion. The Romans knew who Rabbi Shimon was, and they said he is deserving of death. And that is the beginning of the Gemara, why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had to go and hide in the cave for 12, in the end, 13 years. Okay? But this is what is interesting for us. Now, under the heading of Rav Kook on globalization, I always suggest for people to take an educated guess where Rav Kook is going to go. And it's very clear, especially after I gave you the heading, that Rav Kook is going to justify Rabbi Yehuda and the idea of taking the good from the non-Jewish world. And that is very clearly what is playing in the background here, the music playing in the background here, where one of the main points of disagreement between the Haredi and Hasidic element within Orthodox Jewry and the more modern Orthodox element, the students of Rav Soloveitchik or the students of Rav Kook, is how to look at the external world. Whereas in the Haredi world, they try and keep things black and white. Just stay away from the foreign world. Don't learn secular studies. Don't go to the army. Everything there is bad. Everything in the Torah is good. Keep it simple. On the other hand, Rav Kook is going to tell us that there is room for each one of these three approaches. Otherwise, they would not all have been written in the Talmud. Okay, so that's just foreshadowing a drop. And again, remember what's playing in the background is not only how to deal with the Western world and the modern science, etc., but also the upcoming globalization, which is little but slowly but surely rising in the world. Rav Kook writes as follows. This is in chapter 2 of his commentary on the Masechet Shabbat, Siman Reish Nun Tet, 259. By the way, that's 259 chapters just on the second chapter of Masechet Shabbat. Rav Kook has a lot to write. Hamatara shel tikun ha'chevra ha'enoshit, the goal of fixing up human society, ki bivadai mitchalefet lefi chilufei hadeyot. Rav Kook already is telling us that there is room for different approaches towards the outside world, towards the Romans, towards the Western world. And just like you have three different rabbis here, as the Gemara Masechet Brachot says, that just like people's faces are different, so too their personalities and their thought process is different. Rav Kook is telling us that there is room for the more Haredi approach, as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, take guard, stay away, don't praise the outside world. On the other hand, there is room for Rabbi Yehuda's approach, which says, yes, learn the good. We're not going to stop wearing glasses because it was a goy, a non-Jew, who invented them. Take the good. It doesn't have to be a Jew who invented computers. Yeah, Jews invent a lot of good things, disproportionately. But Rabbi Yehuda says, give credit where credit is due. On the other hand, who's in the middle? Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says no comment. He sees the problem of mixing with the Western world. He sees the necessity and advantage and benefits of mixing with the modern world. And Rabbi Yossi is there to show us Zelo Pashut. It's not simple. And the Talmud, Rav Kook explains, is teaching us all three approaches because all three of them are necessary. Ulefi otav dalah hagdola, ben kodesh lechol, v'sheben Yisrael la'amim, just like we start every week with Havdalah, where we say that God divided between the Jews and the Gentiles. He decided between light and darkness. And so too, yes, when we're talking about the Jewish world vis-a-vis the outside and non-Jewish world, yes, there is importance in Havdalah, in division. And I remember of Tzvi Yehuda Kook, he used to say in French, division, c'est pas séparation. Imagine out of the Canadians here, you can tell me what I said wrong. But if I understood correctly, division is not separation. In other words, that yes, we are divided from the non-Jews, just like in the Beit HaMikdash, the Kohanim are divided from the Levi'im, and the Levi'im from the Yisrael. And there is also a woman's section, just like we have in the Beit Knesset. And there is a important place for each of the different sections. So even if we sometimes divide between men and women or between Jews and non-Jews, division is not separation. King Gdolahi Avdalat Matara Shel Knesset Yisrael biyachas letikun chevrat mina adam sheyoreget elea. The Jewish people yearn to fix mankind. Litaken olam b'malchut shaddai. We want to fix all of mankind, which again is 99.8% of the world. So we have to relate to the non-Jewish world. Le'ota matara she'etzig lefanav am piromaim, especially when it's a challenging, complex situation like the Romans. Because again, on the one hand, the Romans are our enemies, and they just killed 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, and they just destroyed our Beit HaMikdash, and they are pagan people, and they don't believe in morality. On the other hand, if we want to bring light, to be an Or LaGoyim, to be a light to the nations, and also to benefit ourselves, to benefit the Torah, and to take good from the outside world, even when things are very complex. By the way, some people would say the same thing about Western culture. There are definitely good things in American culture, North American culture. I'll correct myself for the Canadians, right? There are good things in North American culture. There are bad things in North American culture. And we have to, even if we want to take the good, I'll mention parenthetically that even in the Haredi community, where they educate their children into black and white and keep things simple and stay away from the outside world, it's just a matter of time that little by little, as we've said in every class of Rav Kook, the world and society, including the Haredim, little by little are maturing. And so too, if at the beginning, Haredim did not like using automobiles, they didn't want to use cars. And at the beginning, they didn't want to use computers. And today, they realize that computers raise the Torah world and raise mankind, including Haredi world, so many to a much higher level of learning. So it's even if you say, let's not touch the outside world, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai seems to say, Rav Kook is saying eventually, yes, there is good there. What the balance is, that's our topic. So the first point that we saw in paragraph Aleph is that there is a time and a place for each approach. Paragraph Bet. Muvan hadavar shelefi hitchalfut hamatara mukhrachim gam ken harbe ma'asim uzdarim lehitchalef. Rav Kook gives a general rule, and he says that there are a lot of different topics in the world. And on some topics, it is easier for us to cooperate with the outside world, let's call it the Western world. And on certain topics, it is more difficult. So that's the first thing. And again, this is like we said in the first paragraph, lehavdil. We have to differentiate. Chazal say in the Talmud Yerushalmi that why do we say Havdalah and Shmona Esrei, those who daven in Mariv, Filat Arvit, we say the bracha Vatachon Antanu, which is like a mini Havdalah, in the bracha of knowledge. And the Talmud Yerushalmi explains, Im ein da'at Havdalah minayin. If there is no knowledge, how can we divide? How can we differentiate? And so, too, the way that we understand things is by differentiating, by comparing. If I say that somebody is tall, what does that mean? Well, compared to most people, he is tall. That is how he is different. If I say that somebody is smart, compare him with most people, and he is on the smarter end of the bell curve. In other words, if you want to understand anything or anyone, it is based on differentiation. So there are going to be a lot of different topics, and each topic, the relationship to the Western world is going to be different, respectively, to that topic. אבל בכל זה נפגשים גם כן דברים מתאימים בפועל, שבין למטרה הגסה הראויה להיות מצוירת אצל הרומאים, בין למטרה העליונה והקדושה של כנסת ישראל, even though that the goal of the Jewish people is almost diametrically opposed to the goal of the Roman people, it depends on the topic. Hadvarim alalu hem tikunim na'im vetovim. Again, bridges are good. Computers are good. And let's give credit where credit is due. And that is why this is the first opinion, even though Rav Kook stresses all three approaches are brought in the Talmud. The first approach is the positive approach of take the good from every culture. Paragraph Gimel. ומי שפוגש תמיד שר ההשוויה המעשית, and somebody who knows how to find the common ground, the common denominator where it needs to be found. Parenthetically, he is referring here to Rabbi Yehuda. ולוקח את הטוב ומשתמש בו לטובה, ונהנה ממנו, he knows how to take the good. ומשבחו, and he praises it. Even though Rabbi Yehuda also knows that the Roman culture and the Roman people, with their paganism and immorality, etc., they are problematic. Nevertheless, we see in the Torah, Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, he was the world's economist. There's nothing wrong with being an economist. And he was also very handsome. And his physical characteristics and his physical talents, that's how the Vilna Gaon explains the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, that the revival, the beginning of the revival of the Jewish people will begin with what we call secular Zionism. The topics that we have in common with America and France and Britain and with most nations in the world. And that was Yosef. Joseph, he spoke Egyptian, but he did not lose his righteousness. And again, that is an important point behind the ideology of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, yes, take the good from the outside world. The same thing internationally. The fact that the United States of America is helping Israel today, and by the way, they just finally publicized who is doing most of the airstrikes. It is 70% Israel, 30% America. And historically, it's not our main topic, but it definitely is connected, that the role of Israel, that was always like sort of like the schnorrer, asking America for aid and asking us for help. Apparently, at least in this war and also in the previous war, it's important for Israel to show America that America needs us as well. Anybody knows there was a former ambassador of Israel to America, Ettinger, forgot his first name, maybe Yoram Ettinger. He has a podcast where he always discusses the importance that we should stress to Americans how much they gain from the partnership with Israel, that it is a two-way partnership. And part of the idea, parenthetically, is that if the Democratic Party in America is slowly but surely, many of them are leaving their support for Israel, Israel would be smart to show America that America gains from this partnership as well. Not just that Israel developed the cherry tomato and that Israel is leading the world in desalination and a lot of scientific things, but especially in the military form, where the David Sling and the Iron Dome. And today, I just heard that today, Iran sent a missile on Turkey. Don't ask me what they had in mind, but how was Turkey able to knock it down? Well, it was the Israeli knowledge that went into they have the Iron Dome. In other words, it's good for the world to recognize that they are also today in modern Israel, it is a two-way street, which is good regarding any pipe. Because if we want to accept things from the Western world, it is important for us and them to realize that we have what to contribute to them as well, especially as the light to the nations, as Isaiah writes. Okay. I would even say, I remember as a kid, maybe some of the people my age and up remember Abba Iban. Anybody remember Abba Iban? So Abba Iban, he was a very eloquent spokesman. He was actually from South Africa, and that fine accent that he presented Israel very, very well in the United Nations. And again, that is like Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe a better example would be Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, I would say, is the Rabbi Yehuda approach of our generation, where Rabbi Jonathan Sacks knew very well how to give over the message of Judaism to the non-Jewish world, to the Christian world, to the English, to the Anglo world. And that eloquence is something that Rav Kook is pointing out here, why Rabbi Yehuda has to be the first spokesman. You'll see how Rav Kook is explaining Rabbi Yehuda's personality with his prize, with the reward that he got. Because this is going to be the major approach when Jews deal with non-Jews. The major first spokesman should be a Rabbi Jonathan Sacks figure, a Rabbi Yehuda figure, who sees the good, even in the Romans, in their bridges, in their bathhouses, etc., etc., because this is what's suitable for most occasions. Continues Rav Kook in paragraph Dalit. Back to the share screen. Paragraph Dalit. וכאשר התנאים הראשיים במאמר החברה האנושית הוא חילוף הקניינים, here he's talking about the symbolism of the three topics that the Rabbi Yehuda praises in the Romans. You know what? Maybe we'll do this orally because we're a little behind schedule on time. Rav Kook brilliantly says that globalization is going to be comprised of these three topics. Listen well, because this is a really ingenious chidush. 100 years ago, Shvakim, the marketplace, Rav Kook says that the marketplace represents economy. World economy is going to bring globalization. And that is what the euro is about. And that it took a lot of years until Europe understood that why is America so much ahead of them on just about every topic? Because American states work together. If Europe would work together, and if the world economy works together, and Chinese economy works together with America, works together with Russia, works together with Canada, everyone's working together, that is going to bring world peace. So Rav Kook explains again, what are the three topics that Rabbi Yehuda praises? These are the praises which will eventually bring globalization: marketplaces, bridges, and bathhouses. So marketplaces represents the world economy. What about bridges? Rav Kook ingeniously explains that bridges is transportation. Rav Kook did not see jet planes, but he saw where things were going. And he saw with his genius that the world is going to become a global village, not just because of the economy, but that economy is also going to be a lot more doable because of jet planes and transportation. And so that explains Rav Kook is the symbolism of the bridges, that the bridges is something that we should participate with the Goyim. What about the third topic? Bathhouses. Rav Kook explains that bathhouses symbolize hygiene and health. And the truth is, I did not understand this until the the corona epidemic that drove the world crazy just a couple of years ago, where Rav Kook says exactly when there is going to be a health epidemic in a globalized world with mass transportation and mass economy, everyone's working together. So those epidemics are going also to be spread. The germs are going to be spread everywhere. But the solution is also here, that just like America was looking for the vaccine, Israel was looking for the vaccine. Eventually, it was the Pfizer company from Switzerland, right, who found the vaccine. And they basically saved the world. So today, just like an epidemic, a global world is spread from one continent to another, also the vaccine and health, as soon as mankind has a solution, everyone is going to gain from it. So Rav Kook is explaining again beautifully, how is globalization going to take place? He says mankind little by little is going to mature, and the world is going to benefit from, again, bathhouses, marketplaces, and what's the third? What did I forget? The bathhouses, the marketplaces, and the bridges. Which again, Rav Kook, to summarize this point, he says that this is symbolizing the 3 points which should bring world peace, and that is world economy, that is the marketplace, world travel, that are the bridges, and bathhouses, which symbolize the world health. Okay, so let us continue. Now we're going to see a couple of other sources where Rav Kook goes a little more into depth about globalization. Let's look together in source number 3. Rav Kook in Orot, in chapter 5 of Orot Yisrael, paragraph Bet, Tzedakah asa akadosh baruch hu im olamo, ma shelo natan kol hakishronot b'makom echad. God did a favor to the world that he did not put all of the talent in one place, but he spread it out. Some people are musical, other people draw, other people are good at the sciences, other people are architects. Every person has what to contribute. And God did us a favor. Why is this such a big favor? Because he continues, the drive for completion, which is the most ideal drive in mankind, again, if France has what to contribute and England has what to contribute to mankind, it is good that we will get along and contribute in one global village. And that way, each one that strive for perfection, which is ingrained in human beings. We want to grow, we want to mature, we want to learn, we want to perfect ourselves and the world. So, how is that going to be? Rav Kook says, well, every country, every culture has what to give. I'll mention parenthetically, Rav Kook, as you all know, as we all know, we mentioned before, is the father of religious Zionism. And he saw with the Balfour Declaration, the first Aliyah, the second Aliyah, the third Aliyah, that the Jews are beginning to come home. By the way, statistically, today, 7.8 million Jews, just to update it, 7.8 million of the world's Jews, which apparently is about half, if not most, of the world Jews, are in the land of Israel for the first time since the exile of the 10 tribes. And what that means is not just that the Jews have come home from Yemen and from Egypt and from Poland and Germany and Italy and Australia and America, et cetera, but the concept, there's a Kabbalistic concept of likut hanitzotzot, of gathering the sparks of mankind, that there is good. There was good in Roman culture, like we see in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion here. But the Roman culture itself, there was a lot of bad there. So the Romans eventually fell. But what remained in mankind from Roman culture is what the Jews who were there, what we took, and we will bring to the land of Israel. Similarly, the Jews in Germany. We all heard of the Yekes. Maybe there are even Yekes here participating with us. The Yekes are very orderly. And where did they get that? I mean, they have the same DNA as the Jews in Morocco. But the Yekes, growing up in Germany, learned and took the good from the German culture, that preciseness, which unfortunately the Germans used for terrible means during the Holocaust. But there is a need in the world for being exact. On the other hand, the Jews who come on Aliyah from Morocco, maybe they are not Yekes, but they are very warm and they're emotional. And the Ethiopian Jews are very fine. And the Jews from England bring manners. And the Jews from America bring the business acumen and democracy. And that is how the world is going to globalize, that the Jews from each and every galut, each and every exile, are supposed to bring the good from every exile together and show the world how to harmonize them in the land of Israel. Let's skip to paragraph number 6, and here we get to the last major point. Rav Kook writes in source number 6, this is also from Orot Yisrael, chapter 5, paragraph 11. ראויה היא האנושיות שתתאחד כולה למשפחה אחת. It is fitting, it is proper for the world to unite to be one big happy family. Now, this sounds a little, I think we mentioned in the previous year, you remember John Lennon and his album Imagine, right? Where John Lennon writes, imagine a world without countries. Imagine a world without religious wars. There will be a lot more peace in the war if there's nothing to fight about. If people will not fight over oil, if they won't fight over religions. Now, as an atheist, John Lennon saw the world uniting under atheism or maybe socialism. But what Rav Kook is talking about is that, yes, the world needs to become one big happy family. And as a matter of fact, intermarriage is good. And this is something very, very interesting, what Rav Kook is saying. Because we, growing up in our education, like we said before, in the Haredi community, they try keeping things very black and white. This is good, this is bad. For children, that approach is necessary. So we were taught that intermarriage is bad. If I were to ask any Jewish child in the world, oh, There, by the way, that's just a warning. I hope there won't be a siren, but we'll try and finish up. Usually there's like 10 minutes before the warning and the siren, but there might not be a siren. It depends on the area. B'kitzur, intermarriage for the world is good. It's not bad. In other words, Rav Kook is saying if the president of the United States has grandchildren who live in China, he will think twice before opening up a war against China, and vice versa. And if blacks marry whites, that is for sure a very important advance in world maturity, that we don't judge a person by the color of his skin. And growing up in America in the 1960s, I don't remember ever seeing a black man and a white woman holding hands walking in the street. Thank God mankind and democracy has matured. And today we know it's very good for blacks to marry whites. And it's good for Italians to marry Irish, and it's good for Russians to marry Americans. And that is going to contribute to world peace and world economy. And here's the big question, what about you? How is it that we Jews say that all of mankind should intermarry with each other and the whole world should be one big happy family? But we Jews, we are against intermarriage and we refuse to marry with Gentiles. And if somebody says, hey, at first glance, that sounds racist, right? It's a good question. And that is why it is so important what we are learning today. Rav Kook goes on again back to the share screen. We are in source number 6, and we'll do this quickly. The world, it is good that the world is going to globalize. And again, have a global economy and global healthcare and global transportation. If we don't have so many borders and so many flags, and people are going to fight over oil, and adarabah, people should work together, that is good for world peace. So let's intermarry, not us, but the whole world should be one big happy family. Aval, and here's a big but, העולם צריך לעידון התמציתי שאנושיות משתכללת על ידו. But even in a family, you still need a Bechor. What is the job of the Bechor, of the firstborn? That is the job of B'ni Bechori Yisrael. The Jewish people are called God's firstborn. What is the job of the firstborn? When you don't see Abba and Ima, when father and mother are not around, the young kids, they can kill each other. I remember in every family, you probably have this, that you come a point where the kids are old enough that you don't need a babysitter anymore. And so my parents put my older brother Morty in charge. And when my parents went out on Saturday night, so I remember we used to take, my mother had these cooking mitts, these cooking mitts that you shouldn't burn your hand. And we used to put them on and have boxing matches. We're three brothers, and we are 1 year apart from each other. So there's just 2 years between the oldest brother and myself. So we used to have boxing matches. But as soon as things got a little out of hand, it was always the oldest brother, Morty, who remembered that if something breaks, Abba and Ima are going to hold me responsible. That is the job of Am Yisrael. Because when your father isn't around, you can't see God. So God puts in charge, as if it were, the Bechor, the firstborn, who is the Jewish people, who were the first people to realize monotheism, the first people to realize morality. And little by little, we teach that to the world. So even when we want all of the world to marry each other and travel and do business with each other, that globalization is great. What about you Jews? You don't want to intermarry with the Goyim? Correct. Why? Because in a family, even if everybody is brothers, you still need a Bechor. You need that firstborn to be the responsible one, to be the one who is setting the tone. And this is where the land of Israel comes in. It's not a coincidence that God is bringing most of the Jews are already back in the land of Israel. Because what is going, how can we say the whole world should intermarry and the whole world should globalize, but the Jewish people should be a little separate, a little divided? Well, that is where the home court advantage comes in. Anybody who knows sports knows that if the New York Yankees are playing against the Toronto Blue Jays, if the game takes place in New York, New York has an advantage. If it's taking place in Toronto, Toronto has an advantage. That's what's called the home court advantage. So when we today are returning to the land of Israel, we can, listen well, very important point, we can adopt that which we want and partner together with the Western outside non-Jewish world. Why? Because we still have the home court advantage. We have a Jewish country which has the highest birth rate by far of any Western country in the OECD. Why? Because the Jewish country still believes in the family unit. We get together on Friday night and make kiddush and light candles and have a family meal. By the way, that's just about all Israelis, even the non-religious. I hope they light their candles before sundown. But the idea is that the Jewish people in Israel, we can develop our culture the way we want. Yes, it is a Jewish and democratic country. So we have that pipe open to the non-Jewish world. And that is why we help the non-Jewish world with desalinization and with the Iron Dome and with the agriculture and all the great things that Israel develops. So the pipe is open that we can help them, but it's also open that we can benefit from them. We don't have to invent all of the computers. We don't have to invent all of modern technology because the pipe is open. And obviously, most important, it's not just to bring the cherry tomato to the world, but to bring the Jewish family values, the family unit, the morality, the Ten Commandments, which in the state of Israel is just getting stronger and stronger, especially over the last 2 years. 35% of the young people in Israel, that's age 16 to 35, that's what they checked in the survey. 35% of the young people have become significantly closer to Judaism over the last 2 years since the beginning of the war. Why? During war, you analyze what is life about and what is Israel about and why should we be fighting and why are the enemies and why are anti-Semites always trying to kill us? Were it not for God, we would really be up the creek. So this idea of having a Jewish state where we can be the Bechor and set the tone for the rest of the world. Maybe I'll add another point. I wrote an article once about how the character traits of the average firstborn is very parallel to the character traits of the stereotype of the Jew, where the firstborn, you can find this very easily on Google, but there was a best-selling book called Born to Rebel, where Professor Sulloway, I think he was the president of Yale University, for trivia buff, his real name is Soloveitchik, but I guess that sounds too Jewish. So he anglicized it from Soloveitchik to Sulloway, and he writes, what are the character traits of the firstborn? He says the firstborn statistically, they are overachievers. There's a disproportionate amount of firstborn Nobel Prize winners. There's a disproportionate amount of presidents of the United States who are firstborn and top scientists and prize winners. And also, firstborns are very responsible because, again, they're the ones who are responsible for taking care of the younger siblings when you can't see your father or you can't see God in the analogy. Similarly, the Jewish people have a disproportionately high amount of Nobel Prizes and of success in journalism, in science, in music, in really every field. Actually, I was thinking of bringing it, but we don't have time anyway. Thomas Friedman wrote an interesting article in the New York Times many years ago under the heading Focus on Israel. Why is the world preoccupied with this tiny state? And if we would have time, we would discuss. There are many, many different. He interviews psychologists, historians, religious leaders, and everyone has a different take. But it doesn't make a difference whether you are an archaeologist, you're interested in Israel. If you're a socialist, you're interested in Israel. If you're a military person, you're interested in Israel. If you're a Muslim, you're interested in Israel. If you're a Baptist, you're interested in Israel. If you're a Catholic, you're interested in Israel for a different reason. If you are a historian and you think about the Holocaust, you're interested in Israel. And everybody is interested in Israel for a different reason. But the common denominator is almost everyone in the world is interested. All these arrows are facing towards the Jewish people. And like I said before, today that Israel is back on center stage again. According to US News, out of 180 countries, about 180 in the United Nations, Israel is rated the 10th strongest country. That is in terms of the military and economy. That was in the U.S. News. In the Economist, the British Economist said that Israel has the third most vibrant economy out of 180 economies in the world. Now, Israel is already back on center stage. Yes, we are still small, but we need to be small and we need to have that home court advantage so that Jews will not intermarry with non-Jews. Because when Jews are such a small minority, wherever we are going to be, intermarriage is going to be a problem, especially because we, Davka, are in favor of peace. We're in favor of globalization. So, what is the answer to assimilation? What is the answer to intermarriage? Rav Kook says we need to live in a Jewish state where we set the tone. There's no problem with going on a business trip from Israel to New York or Israel to Hong Kong, wherever it is. But you come home to your family, to your children, to your shul, to your family oriented, Jewish oriented light to the nations. And that is how Rav Kook combines both aspects. On the one hand, yes, it's good that the world could globalize. And we explained how Rav Kook explains how it's going to globalize already 100 years ago. He said it's going to come through the economy, through transportation, through world health. But what is the mixture going to be? Well, the Jewish people, I'm summarizing for those who didn't notice, the Jewish people are going to take that which was good from the German culture, from French culture, from American culture, from Yemenite culture, take the good from all those cultures, bring them into what's called gathering the sparks into the Jewish country. In the Jewish country of Israel, we will harmonize, learn, and it'll take a couple of generations to learn to harmonize how to take the good and leave the bad of all of those cultures. But as far as the world is concerned, it's good that the world start folding up the flags, stop fighting about oil, stop fighting about borders, stop fighting about jihads and crusades, and the world should start intermarrying. And in fact, that is what is happening. Mankind is maturing. The world is intermarrying with each other, which 99.8% of the time is great. But what about the Jewish people? Rav Kook explains that even when the world is going to be one big happy family, you still need the Bechor to set the tone. That is B'ni Bechori Israel. The Jewish people are appointed by God to be the firstborn. And that is why we need to be creative and we need Nobel Prizes. And that is how we will influence the world that they should want to do business with us and learn from our military and also learn from our morality. The fact that the Jews, Israel has the highest rate, we mentioned this last time, of altruistic kidney donors of the world. and that Israel is the first one to come whenever there is a tsunami or major earthquake. We're the first ones to come and set up a hospital. That is fantastic. But those people who go to the Philippines to build a field hospital, they will come back home to be with their family, with their children, with the Jewish state. And that is how little by little we shine the light of God and monotheism and morality to the world. But we don't intermarry. We don't assimilate, but we will take the good from each and every country. That's what Then Gathering in Exiles is about. And that is how Rav Kook, already 100 years ago, shoots the arrow and shows us what should be the direction. Globalization, yes, but don't assimilate, and we should not intermarry with them. How? By having the Jewish state, living in the Jewish state, utilizing the home court advantage where we will not middalel, we will not water down our ideology, but rather can spread it to the rest of the world. Okay, we covered a lot and a lot of interesting ideas. Um, any questions or comments? Anybody who wants to can unmute themselves. And this was the last in our series of 6 classes of Rav Kook's philosophy. So if you have any questions or comments about the whole series, now's the time to ask as well.
I just hope this isn't the end and you'll come back and do more because it's been really informative and thank you very much. So we need to
Oh,
learn more of Rav Kook. So toda
my
rabah.
pleasure. My pleasure. Tell Rabbi Kelman, whenever he asks Baruch Hashem, it's always I've always been able to answer in the affirmative. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Any other comments or questions? Most interesting. Thank you. How do I get into the chats here? I always thank you so much. I love learning with you. I've already told Ilana. Oh, who's Ilana? Okay. Any other comments or questions? You can turn on your mics or write them in chat. Okay. So Bezrat Hashem, looking forward to seeing you all again in another series, Bezrat Hashem. And we should hear Bisarot Tovot. And did you notice that the Atra'ah, the warning, there was no siren. So we already had a good news today. Baruch Hashem, everybody be well, and let's continue davening for each other. Kol Tuv, be well. Shalom, shalom. Oh, hi, Ima. I see my mother is here.
תודה רבה.
Vakasha, Kol Tuv.